So my high school robotics team was very close, and I was a leader within the group. I frequently hosted events at my house, such as our annual homework roast, where we had a bonfire and burned our schoolwork at the end of the year. And eventually, at one point in my senior year, we all pooled our money together to buy a beginner's kit or whatever it's called for Dungeons and Dragons. I had never actually seen anyone play D&D before. I don't think Critical Role was out yet at the time. Stranger Things definitely wasn't out, I think. I don't have any idea how we got the inkling to play D&D, but 17 of us pooled our money together and bought a beginner's kit. I was the dungeon master, and the other 16 players spent several hours rolling characters. We only had one set of dice, and everybody passed it around. Everybody's characters were extremely minimal. We had one player who was playing a bard named Nicki Minaj, who was based on Nicki Minaj. If nothing else about this story could tell you when I graduated high school, that probably did. And I was a terrible DM. I didn't know what I was doing, but we had a blast. Every time I had an idea, I told the players what I thought they should do, and they did it, and we had a great time. We were playing The Lost Mines of Phandelver, which comes with the beginner's kit. Since then, I think I've gotten a little bit better at DMing. I'm currently running my 4th campaign, although none of the campaigns I've run have been D&D. I've only ever run 2 D&D one-shots, and the rest have been other games. But I've played a lot of Dungeons & Dragons as a player. I've probably played, I want to say, about 3 years of experience. So while I don't think of myself as a huge D&D fan, I think most people would classify me as a D&D fan. Here's my jar of unpainted fairies and dragons. Here's the very first character I ever played, Sage, a storm sorcerer, that I played for longer than one session. Here is my mystic, whom I was playing when the mystic class was decommissioned by Wizards of the Coast for being too overpowered. She was downed in every session and only managed to survive on luck. When the mystic class was decommissioned, my DM told me that Estrella was her name, was the last living mystic, and I needed to protect her because once she died in the game, there would be no more mystics and I wasn't allowed to play another one. Mystic is my favorite class. But my favorite character I ever played was Cleo, a tiefling illusionist who was pretending to be an ASMR. And I had to spend 6 months hiding this from my roommates and neighbors whom I was playing the game with. My roommate, who was an exceptionally knowledgeable D&D fan, would always come up to me and tell me during breakfast or whatever that she thought maybe I was misunderstanding some of the rules for ASMR because she didn't think they could learn Hellish Rebuke. And I told her that it was because of my Warlock subclass or my Warlock single level that I took, or my well, I'm a Fallen ASMR and they can learn Hellish Rebuke. And then when she looked that up, I said, oh, no, a different type of Fallen ASMR, which was a lot of fun. That particular roommate is now our DM, and she and I just got back from watching Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. Before I move on, I just have to show this one. I was never able to show this to my previous D&D group because our DM tragically had to move 6 hours away, but I own a double feature of D&D and D&D Wrath of the Dragon God. I will watch these one day when I can force other people to suffer through them with me. But I didn't watch those today. Today I saw Honor Among Thieves. The most important thing to say about this movie is that it is a lot of fun. I think I was smiling the entire time. My former roommate was laughing very, very frequently, but the guy who was sitting next to me was absolutely losing his shit. And I know this is a critical analysis channel, but I feel it important to say that, to me, a movie that makes me laugh the entire time, or where I am smiling from minute 1 to the last one, that is a good movie, even if the story doesn't make sense. However, I'm happy to report that the story in Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves does make sense. You see, I was originally kind of nervous about this movie, but Jeff Thu of Mother's Basement taught me a very simple trick to be able to predict whether a fun fan comedy movie is going to be good based on the trailer. I would highly recommend checking out Mother's Basement's breakdown of Detective Pikachu, the trailer at least, where he explains that it's a very good sign if in a trailer you see extended sequences of characters talking to each other, where you can see their chemistry, you can see that their lines flow into each other, the dialogue works, and that the jokes aren't just simple one-liners. They're actually well constructed given the movie and the scene. I paid attention to that going into the marketing campaign for D&D Honor Among Thieves, and I noticed that many of the ads seem to contain whole scenes or scene snippets that were very enjoyable to watch, which meant that the director or whoever was cutting those felt confident enough in the material to show us what the movie was going to look like and not feel the need to trick us into coming to go see something. On top of that, I think it's worth mentioning that I went to Barnes & Noble about a month ago and I found five movie tie-in books, 2 of which were for children and 3 of which were for adults, like novels and stuff. They really expected this movie to succeed, and I was afraid that it was because they were going to ride on the popularity of Dungeons & Dragons, which they are, of course. But I think this movie is going to succeed because people are going to want to see it. I just talked to a family member about this movie who asked if I would be interested in seeing it again this weekend, and I said, you know what? Yeah, I would. So before I get any further, I would like to say I'm not going to spoil the plot of this movie at all. However, I am going to comment on some of the ways that the movie deviates from the game, and how maybe some of the mechanics did or didn't translate. If that kind of thing counts as a spoiler to you, you should leave. Otherwise, I just want to give an overview of what this movie is like, since I thought it was extremely fortuitous that I was able to get an early ticket before the technical actual release date. I want to talk real quick, speaking of marketing, about what happened before the movie. A couple of things. For one, I found out that I was going to be in a 4DX experience, which I've never even heard of. I really, like everyone else, got out of the habit of going to the movies during COVID. I showed up, I found out what 4DX is. Apparently it's an immersive movie-going experience where you're in a seat that strongly resembles like a ride at a theme park, that will shake throughout the movie. During fight scenes, the seats will jolt. If during wide panning shots of a countryside or whatever, the seats will sort of feel like an airplane, kind of roll like hills. If somebody gets hit, the seats will bump. There's also like a getting punched in the back kind of feeling, where if a character falls on their back, you'll feel like a light tap from the chair on your back. There are some other features that are also interesting though. There's smell, although I was sitting next to a smoker and I couldn't tell if the various smells throughout the film were intentional or part of the movie, or not part of the movie, sorry. I'm not sure. I don't know how well that worked. there's wind, there was rain. I read somewhere that other 4DX theaters have snow. We did not have snow, but there was not really, well, there was a place in the movie that there could have been snow. There was no snow in our theater. My favorite was, I was not able to figure this one out. There's a little like rubber tube that goes between your ankles, and it goes back and forth like this, like during certain things. I was never able to figure out what it was supposed to represent. During certain situations, this little rubber hose would wiggle between your legs. And I have no idea why. It was always when something was happening. I'm just not sure what the pattern was. The last one that I forgot was there were these two little, I mean, they were here on me, but I'm 5'0", so like they would probably go on the neck of a grown man. There were these two little like air things that go over your ears, well, here. And like if an arrow went by a character's head, there would be a puff of air here, so your hair would get messed up. All of this happening in time with the movie. And for the first half of the movie, it was very distracting. I was constantly thinking about, what is this new feature? And did that work? Was that in time? And I would think back to the arrow whizzing by my ear and go, you know, did that feel like the arrow whizzed by my ear? Or what? But I will say that by the halfway mark in the movie, it definitely was less distracting, but by the back third, it enhanced the experience of the movie. I do think this is going to end up being not a big deal. This is not going to save the theater industry, but I am thinking that I will go see the Super Mario movie next week so that I can experience another movie in 4DX before it gets removed from theaters. Although I did look at the schedule, and it looks like there are going to be a lot of movies this year that have 4DX. So I guess it is doing its job in that it is enticing me to go back to the theater. But additionally, on top of that, I went to this fan experience thing, which was how I was able to see the movie early. There was no, registration or anything required. You just had to buy a ticket early. I bought mine about 6 hours before the film started. And the fan experience was that there was a 20-minute segment where the cast talks about their favorite scenes or which parts of the movie were, or which characters in the movie were their favorite, or what abilities they'd like to have in real life. And I hated that because they ruined almost all of the jokes in the movie. They would show clips of jokes that I hadn't seen in the trailer. I did my best to stare at my fingernails and watch them glitter to avoid getting spoiled as much as possible. But it really, really annoyed me. And it definitely diminished my enjoyment of the first 15 or so minutes of the movie as I was thinking about how angry I was that they made me sit through that. I think it would have been fun and interesting if they had put it at the end. I go to Fathom events whenever I can, and usually when there's some kind of commentary from the creator, they put them at the end. Everyone else should try to do this. Putting it before the movie really sucks. We've already decided we're going to see it. I don't want to see 5 more trailers one after another. As far as the actual movie, I will say it is a little bit corporate feeling, calculated, safe, but it's just a hair. Like, I would say 3% of the movie feels like palpably like it was calculated to have the best, safest audience reaction. The plot feels a little bit generic. You can definitely feel that certain characters were written in and out of larger and smaller roles throughout the editing process. This was I believe this was probably a Marvel-style movie where they had a few plans going in, they shot a couple of different configurations, and ended up deciding on a final version after everything else was finished. However, it still feels like a cohesive product. It still feels like a cohesive story. The important thing is that the core story is easy to follow and makes sense and is emotionally resonant with the other things that happen in the movie. And that does occur. Whatever else happened in those other versions, whatever might have been changed, the final product that they put on screen is a story that actually works. And I know that sounds like faint praise, but it's a bar that I don't think a lot of things clear. Particularly blockbusters like this, or fun family blockbusters, especially comedies. There is an emotional core, but there are also other characters with good, simple, but well-executed arcs that everyone between the ages of 7 and 99 can follow and also enjoy. They feel straightforward, but not done to death. And I think that is a real win of the movie. It does have that mass appeal factor that they were looking for, even though that can be detrimental. I didn't come out of this movie enchanted. I remember being a young teen when Star Trek 2009 came out, and I was absolutely enchanted by that movie. I thought about it for a long time. I've seen Star Trek 2009, I want to say 15 to 17 times. That's my cat scratching her scratching board over there, making that noise. I don't think I would want to watch this movie 15 to 17 times, but I definitely think I could tolerate it. But I think the reason why I wasn't enraptured by this movie for hours after it was over is because I already kind of live in this world. Right now, I've been watching all of Star Trek, or my New Year's resolution was to watch all of Star Trek. I have watched hundreds of episodes of Star Trek, and as enchanted as I was when I was a young teenager, now the world just feels like a part of my life. It's not new, but it is comfortable. I didn't come out of D&D Honor Among Thieves wishing that I could be part of this world. I felt like I had a nice time. I felt like I had a great time, even. But the world itself maybe didn't do what it was supposed to. I was thinking about this on the way home. I recently watched Vox Machina, just like everybody else on the planet. I watched season 1 twice, once when it first came out and then once in preparation for season 2. And then now I own the comic books, and also other comic books that are about Vox Machina, not just these two. And Vox Machina is about the experience of playing D&D with your friends. You watch it and you're watching for the camaraderie and the fun and the failure, and laughing at your friend's failure as they can't open a door over and over and over again. There are no door jokes in D&D Honor Among Thieves. This is less about the experience of playing Dungeons & Dragons and more about the desire to live in the world of Faerun, what life is like there, what kind of possibilities are there. But I appreciate how restrained this movie is. It does not try to do everything. Not every class is represented. Very few class abilities make it in. Only things that serve the story were included in the movie, and I do think that was a good choice. However, it did irritate me during the movie that certain things were not included. One of the characters who is frequently used in the marketing material is not actually a member of the party and is separate from everyone else in certain ways. This sort of became confusing to me in the movie as I was watching it, and I realized that what I had thought was going to happen in this movie was not what was going to happen. The party was not who I thought it was, because this is less about the experience of playing D&D and more about this being a movie that could conceivably occur in the world of D&D. But the thing that really sort of disappointed me is the fact that the main character is a bard and never does any bard things. Chris Pine plays a bard who was apparently a folk hero before this story. I'm not sure if he would qualify as a folk hero, but he worked as a hero, as a heroic figure. But we have no idea what he actually did, really. We don't see in his backstory what kind of skills he has. In a fight, he supports the same way you in the audience might support someone in a fight. Passing people things, taking shots, using improvised weapons. Chris Pine's character definitely brings some needed dignity to the bard class, but outside of the use of improvised weapons, I don't think there's a single ability he uses during this film that could recognizably be attributed to the bard class. There are no insults, there are no compliments, there's no inspiration that is exceptionally different from everyone else. There's very little music, and the music that is there is not directly relevant to the situation. It's more like he plays music in quiet moments. He may as well be a level 0 character, which is fine, but I am disappointed. Bard is one of my favorite classes to play, and I think it is a lot of people's favorite class to play because of how much fun it can be to be that kind of character, to come up with those kinds of things on the fly and be able to use them, be able to allow your creativity to affect the story in a way that's much more direct and instantaneous than, say, a wizard who is primarily using spells that are prescribed to him or her from a book. I do think it was a bit of a missed opportunity to actually throw all of that out of the window with the protagonist of the movie. That being said, for someone who enjoys playing bard less, they may not even notice. But overall, I would have to dock maybe half a point from this movie for that. Again, it was fun, it was well constructed, it made sense. I do think it is going to sell the tickets that Hasbro thinks it's going to sell. I'm willing to see it again. I can't really complain, and I do recommend that you go see it. You will have a good time. This video is a bit rambly, and for that I apologize. I came out of this movie and immediately started recording this video. I didn't even know I was going to be making a video before I went into this movie. I hope it made sense. See you at the next one.